Today on Trad Takes, I vent my frustrations and ask the question, why is Trump intent on sabotaging himself? All this and more on Trad Takes. Welcome to episode 10 of Trad Takes, hosted by the Traditionalists. Thank you for joining me on this first ever Lenten edition, where I haven't spent a lot of time keeping track of the news, and so the episodes are much more random. Hit the like button, and please leave a comment if you want to support this channel. And we will start off like we do every week by reading my favorite comment or comments from last week's episode. The first one was in response to my analysis of Jeff Bezos being red-pilled. And this is from, I'm going to butcher this name, Marle Larmar Lelar 9547. And whoever this is says, I suspect he is a savvy businessman, not a convert to sanity. I think that's well put, and I tend to agree. I think Bezos isn't becoming, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but isn't swinging to the right because he is seeing the light and becoming a better person. I think he sees which way the tide is turning and wants to stay relevant like Elon Musk. So totally agree with that summary. Marle Larmar Lelar. Thank you. And then I have to give a shout out, I didn't want to, but I have to give a shout out to Molly Kosovich. A podcast on the digestive system might be a little hard to digest. Well played. Thank you for those comments, and do continue to leave comments for this video, and we will talk about them next week. Moving on to the news. Again, I haven't been really keeping too much informed about it, but one thing that was not possible to get away with ignoring was President Trump's State of the Union address. I started putting together some notes and thoughts on how I wanted to say it, and then as luck would have it, I saw a summary. This is from National Review, but that pretty much exactly says all the things that I was thinking, so I'm just going to read that in the spirit of efficiency. We'll not call it laziness, we'll call it efficiency. President Trump's address to the joint session of Congress was boastful, and sometimes justifiably so. He touted his restoration of order at the border. We didn't need new legislation to secure it, he said. All we really needed was a new president. He was on weaker ground concerning the economy. He said he would balance the budget, but most of the specific plans he advocated would put that goal further out of reach. He also repeated false claims about millions of people over 100 years old collecting Social Security benefits. Those claims depend upon a misinterpretation of a database in which the government does not have a date of death associated with certain Social Security numbers. Even more jarringly, Trump said that he was working every day to bring prices down, even as he imposes the largest increase in tariffs in 80 years. He promises that the disruption will be minimal and the rewards great, which both economic theory and the experience of his own previous administration belie. But he is a lifeline in the form of the Democratic Party, whose members in Congress in attendance could not bring themselves to stand up for mothers who had lost their children to violence by illegal immigrants, for a child with cancer, or for the capture of the Abbey Gate terrorist. The speech confirmed that Trump has less to fear from his opposition than from his own hubris. I think that was pretty well put, and kind of summarizes my view of Trump in a nutshell. I just really want him to be the best president I've ever seen or heard of. I really want him to succeed at everything he does. And then he goes and just shoots himself in the foot repeatedly with either saying things that aren't true and sticking to them, or doing things that are not good for the country, and everyone knows they're not good for the country, but he just does them anyway. It's frustrating. It's watching someone who won the popular vote, won all the swing states, has a very strong coalition, and seems to have most Republicans on board. You can see that by everyone he got through on his cabinet. Never has a presidency been so set up for success. And in a lot of ways, he has been successful. The things that he and his administration have been doing, a lot of them have been great and refreshing and awesome. And then he just slashes his own tires by claiming all these falsehoods, like about the Social Security thing, and imposing these tariffs that are going to tank the economy under his watch. It's almost self-destructive tendencies that he's displaying. And again, it wouldn't be so bad if he were bad. It wouldn't be so bad if he were a Democrat or a really bad Republican that we had no hope for. But he comes so close to doing everything right and then just cuts himself off at the knees. And it's sort of frustrating to watch. And I don't want to be too negative here. It's just a disappointment in the political realm currently for me. Coming so close and yet so far. On a couple of these, right, obviously the border is great. He's done great on the border and he talks about it well, and that's a success in his presidency for sure. The note about Social Security benefits. It played well on TV. We have this many people who are over 120 years old, this many people who are 150 years old, and the implications that they're all collecting Social Security. And yes, I'm sure there's plenty of waste and fraud in Social Security. But he and Musk should be focused on attacking the actual waste and fraud, and not spouting these debunked claims just because they play well on TV. Because what they're doing now is, well, you have this thing. So the Social Security, the ages, that's like a database entry issue. If the Social Security Department doesn't have a date of birth for someone, it just kind of goes wild, and that's why we have these outliers. So that, as a claim of waste, is sort of debunked. And yet, he's spouting it out as if, like, hey, look at all the waste we're going after here. And what he's doing is, again, he's sabotaging himself. Because now, when they're going after real waste and actual waste in Social Security, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. He's already shown that he's not telling the truth, if not straight up lying, about these 200-year-old people. At the very least, he's intentionally misrepresenting them to get applause lines. And that's just such a short-sighted and dumb thing to do. When you're going after waste, there's plenty of real waste. Why make up fake waste? It just gives the left ammunition against him. So that was kind of frustrating for me. And then the tariffs. We should talk about tariffs. First of all, let me get the disclaimer out there. I'm obviously very pro-America, pro-American made. I always buy American when I can, whether it be goods or cars or whatever. I'm all for American manufacturing. That's my line of work. That's what I do. So that aside, tariffs are not a good thing. They may, in the end up promoting more American-made things, but they do so in a very roundabout and expensive way that will likely hurt, if not destroy, our economy. And hopefully most of my listeners know how tariffs work, but I'll explain it just in broad brush strokes for anyone who might not. What a tariff is a tax on an import as it comes into the country. So let's say Canada is providing a good into the United States, right, shipping it across the border, that's worth $100, and they're charging $100 for it. When a 25% tariff goes on to Canada, now what's happening is that every time they sell that $100 good in America, they have to pay the American government $25. Now that sounds all fine and dandy. Now, basically what you're thinking is Canada is only making $75 on that good, and paying 25 of that to the American government. So America's coming out ahead, right? No. What Canada's going to do, and what they should rightfully do when they're tariffed 25%, will be to sell that item to the United States for 25% more. So now they're selling it for $125, and that's where they're giving that $25 to the American government so that they're still making that $100 on that item. And if you say that's wrong and they shouldn't do that, well, they can get $100 if they sell it to Mexico, or they can get $100 if they sell it to England. Why would they necessarily take a loss and only make $75 by selling it to the United States because of these tariffs? So what ultimately happens is that either the American people are now paying $125 for something that used to cost $100, or Canada isn't even selling it to us at all, and that good is just off the market in the United States. And this is simple economics. This isn't something that takes a degree to understand. This isn't something that a president should not understand. Now, of course, I'm not making a blanket statement on tariffs, that tariffs are always bad all the time. There's certainly times when they're useful and times where they can be used as a good tool. For example, if we don't want other countries selling us goods or services, we can tariff them out of existence. Or, and I think this is the case with Trump's administration, if you want to encourage more manufacturing in America of these things, tariffs can be used to do that. But again, it's only after the American people feel the pain of paying $125 for something that was $100, before the American manufacturing scene takes over and says, well, hey, we can make this for $110. And so then Americans will be paying $110 for an American-made product that used to cost $100. But that's a long time, and in the meantime, of course, the price went up, and therefore the people of America are paying more for it. So maybe this is the goal. Maybe the goal is, let's make America 100% self-sufficient and not rely on anyone outside of America for anything. But we're going to go through one hell of an economic time before that happens, just by the nature of these tariffs. And speaking of, I am in manufacturing, this is something I do. When we say American made, right, our devices are American made. But a lot of the components of those devices are not. And a lot of the components of our devices are not even manufactured anywhere in America. It's not possible to make an American-made product that has everything of the subcomponents also made in America. So now what you're doing is, let's say our device cost $100 to make currently, and you're tariffing all of our subcomponents at 25%. Now it costs us another 25% to make our device. And what are we going to do? We're going to do the same thing Canada did. We are going to increase the price of that to cover those costs. And so now even American-made products can go up in price because their components that make them came from overseas by tariffed countries. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it's something that I think is important for everyone to understand. Tariffs, like anything, can be used as a tool. They can be used for good and bad. But in general, I dare to say, blanket tariffs, especially on countries like Canada and Mexico, who are decent trading partners. I understand it a little bit more with China. But any tariff is going to increase the price of goods sold. And that's not a good thing. I don't know if anyone thinks that's a good thing. And so, back to this Trump kneecapping himself, I don't know why he's doing it, because not only is it bad for the economy, but it's going to be directly and immediately bad for the economy that he's in charge of and that he was voted into office to take care of. And I don't see the reason. It looks self-destructive to me. But the summary, like my monologue, is going to end on a positive note, or at least a not negative note. For all the frustrations of Trump sabotaging himself, we can take solace in the fact that the Democrats are doing even more to sabotage themselves. Not clapping or standing up when mothers are brought or paraded in front who had their daughters killed by illegals. Like, what kind of message is that sending? The only message I can think that they're sending is that, well, we hate the big orange man so much that we are going to completely ignore and disregard any of the positive things he's done. And yes, Trump's tariff and lying tendencies are destructive, but they're nowhere in the same ballpark. To this day, I think Kamala Harris is still in the lead for the 2028 Democratic presidential candidate race. And that tells you all you need to know about their state. Okay, so we'll do a little pivot away from Trump to another bit of news that I did manage to see. And that is on, quote-unquote, Pope Francis and his condition. It sounds like he is in stable condition, but that he is likely not long for this earth. Now, I don't need to go into a long monologue on where I stand with him, or where likely most of our listeners stand with him. But I think we can all agree that he is in need of our prayers. I'd say there's sort of like 3 tiers in my mind of the type of prayers we should pray. The first tier is the asking for a miracle, that he converts to the true faith and somehow rights 70 years of wrong in the Vatican II Church. It's unlikely, but faith can move mountains. Perhaps we should pray for that. That's like the top tier, the top shelf prayer in my mind. Tier 2, a little bit lower, would be that upon his passing, whenever it is, someone better is elected to sit on St. Peter's throne. Note that I say someone better. I'm not talking about someone who pretends better. In fact, I'm likely talking about someone who pretends worse. The more radical and crazy the man who sits in that throne, the more likely people will wake up and see the truth of that counterfeit church. My theory has always been that Benedict XVI was worse for the true faith than Francis was, because Benedict XVI brought a lot of people who were on that edge of seeing the truth back into the fold of the Novus Ordo Conciliar Church. So I don't know if that's necessarily something to pray for, that we should pray for an even crazier person to pretend to be the Pope. But we can certainly pray for a continued meltdown and falling apart of the fake church. And then tier 3, the bottom shelf, which is, that's not a bad shelf to live on sometimes. The grounded and realistic shelf is truly just to pray for his soul. I would not want to be in his shoes right now, knocking on death's door with the legacy he has left. And I'm glad I'm not his judge. I'm glad that God is his judge. In some way, somehow, if our prayers can help save him from hell, we should give them. We should do him that grace. Anyway, I'm recording this on a Friday. If he happens to pass away before it releases on Monday morning, my apologies for being late, but just pretend you're listening to it 3 days after it released. Thank you. That sound means we're all out of time for today. Thank you for listening to this special, shorter, and less professional edition, the Lenten edition of Trad Takes. Please like, share, and subscribe to The Traditionalists. Spread the word for my show, Trad Takes, or for any of the other shows hosted by The Traditionalists. And do remember to leave a comment. It could be the one I start off the next show with. This is Eric signing off. God bless you all, and God bless these United States of America.